This is the NAATA Newsreel, Volume 2, and we're here with Kartar Dhillon, who is the subject of the film Turbans, and who's also one of the elders in the South Asian American community. So we're here to talk about her experiences and just get some insight from Kartar Dhillon. So,
give me time.
Okay, sorry.
Gosh, I didn't know it would do that.
Okay, so I guess we can start with your dad's immigration story, because you were telling us a little bit about that last time.
Yes, well, my father came to this country, and I'm not sure of the exact date. Checked the records of shipping. Should do, I suppose, to be more accurate. He came here after having worked for the British Army. It was the only way of survival in Punjab at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Are you from Punjab?
No, I'm from Maharashtra.
Where?
Well, my dad is from Goa and my mom is from Maharashtra. Yeah.
Maharashtra.
So.
And in Punjab, the people were practically starving because not only was the food being taken out and shipped elsewhere, that was the best food growing part of the country, very rich agricultural country, state I should say. And at that time, the British were determined to just grind everything they could out of the people, out of the country. And they were even charging taxes so high that sometimes 50% of what a person had. And people were just beginning to starve. And so in order to get work, the only work that was offered, which is the greatest irony, was by the British Army, the Army of Occupation. So my father, who was the younger of two brothers, went to work for the British Army, and he was sent to China. He was in Hong Kong for a while, and Shanghai for a while. He was put in the artillery, I guess, because he was such a big, powerfully built man that you have to move heavy machinery around, I guess. Guns, hate the word. And he left that, I suppose, as soon as he could, as soon as his term of indenture was up. And he got work on a ship. The ship traveled to North America, South America. So he got in a little traveling and had a chance to see what other parts of the world were like, and decided he liked it in San Francisco and just stayed. He stayed I have proof of the date that he was seen on a dock getting off of a ship. That was in 1899. Jane Singh, you must know her. Mm-hmm. She cut this out and gave it to me from the San Francisco Chronicle. And then earlier I had read, when I was just a little kid, I think I just learned to read second grade. And I read a footnote in a book that said that my father naming him Bakshish Singh is the first person to arrive on the West Coast, maybe in the U.S., I don't know. I don't want to make flat statements because unless I could back them up. Well, this is a footnote and in a book, and I have the book, so I know that it says that in the 1890s he was traveling about in California, and then he settled here. So that is the beginning of the story, and I guess what my father did in those days was to work in a steel mill. The Indian who told me this story said that he worked in an iron mill. this Indian who told me this story was in his 90s when I went to interview him in Imperial Valley. I think he was 94. And he said, yeah, your father worked for an iron mill in Oakland. So after that, I know that he worked all up and down the coast of California, because just from where all of us were born, my oldest brother was born, I shouldn't even try to remember the places where they were born. I know that the second brother was born in Upland, the first one was born someplace along the coast, and then my sister was also born along the coast, and I was born in Simi Valley, that's not far from the coast. And then when I was 1 year old, in 1916, our family moved to Astoria, Oregon. And then there weren't any more children. We had been born very close together in just within a few years, from 1910 to 1916, 4 years. And then the next children were born in Astoria, Oregon, 2 boys, my brother Hadlam and Deja. And then back to California in 1922, I believe. Yeah, six years later. And then there were 2 more children in the family at once, and she called herself Blanche later, and so she's known to everybody as Blanche. Am I speaking loud enough?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how many kids were there in total?
Altogether there were 8.
Oh, okay.
I was 4th down the line.
Okay.
And there was a 5-year difference between me and the next younger child. And the very youngest child, Huddy, was born after our father died, a month or so later. He had the shortest life of anybody in the family. When he was just 18 years old, he joined up with the Marines in the Second World War and was killed on a landing at Okinawa, the very first overseas thing that he could do. And I'll be skipping around because one thing leads to another. Speaking of him being in service, 4 of my brothers were in service during the war, during the Second World War. And one of them, Bud, was in the European theater. Hari was sent to Okinawa in the Asian theater. And let's see, I'll go back a little farther to the beginning. Are you really interested in all this?
Yeah. Well, you were also, like drove trucks, right? During the war,
What?
World War II.
You
You drove trucks,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So you were involved as well.
Yeah. During the war, I guess everything changed for just about everyone. Women came out and not only started working where the men had been working and could no longer do their jobs, then driving trucks is one thing I did. That was working for the Marine Corps. I drove trucks and jeeps and weapons carriers and whatever needed to be done. We would be a convoy of women who would drive about 8 or so trucks, and we would go to Treasure Island and pick up the sailors who were coming back, the Marines who were coming back, and not sailors. If I was driving for the Marine Corps, I guess I was just picking up Marines and take them to the train stations or the airports so that they could get home on their furloughs. And that was just one job that I did. And the reason that I did that job was that I was always looking for something a little more interesting and a little better paying than whatever I was doing. But that was along the way a bit. Before that, I was working in a machine shop, and everything was war. I hate the word, I hate the thought, I hate wars, but it's part of everybody's history. We were making small parts for Navy machine guns. Brooks Camera Company had been made into a machine shop to produce these parts. And we would just, in our part of the work, we just had the blueprints for one part of whatever was being designed or built. And other shops had other parts so that it stayed secret. All this energy that goes into making things to kill people with. Well, it's a sad time right now with everybody rushing to war again. It's it's really a bad time. It seems unbelievable that we could get into a war without knowing who we are fighting or why we are fighting. Don't know who the criminals are who did the terrible thing on September 11, was it? We don't know who they are, but we're going to kill a whole lot more people, innocent people, just to say that we're going to get the criminal. I hope to get the criminal fast so that my little great-grandson won't have to go.
Is he...
He's 18.
Oh, he's 18, right. A lot of people are worried about that. Well, how would you say, like, this is... Because, I mean, you were around for World War II, Vietnam, Korea. Like, you've seen it all. So how do you think this particular situation is different from those? Or is it at all? I don't even know. Having not...
I think every war is for profit. Somebody's making profit off of it. That's the hideous part of it. All these people who will be killed because somebody else will be rich. I really don't want to talk about wars and I get all choked up.
Maybe we can talk about your childhood, going back to turbans. And we won't talk about turbans, the actual turban. We'll talk about this one. So,
go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, you're probably one of the few families in Oregon at that point, right?
The only
Is that, you were the only one? Okay.
In Astoria.
So what was that experience like for your mother, for example, or your parents?
Well, I guess the experience for my mother was one of loneliness, except for the fact that by this time she had children. And every Indian was like a member of our family. We were so close because there were so few Indians here in this country and wherever we were, that they all seemed like brothers or uncles something to our family. We were very close with, but they were just men. There were no women. I think the only friend that my mother had, a friend who came to her house and sat and helped with the cooking sometimes just to be sociable, or the sewing, was a Japanese woman. We spoke with the neighbors who were European immigrant descended, but there was never that give and take like you have with friends of coming and going to one's house. I think the only time we were invited to a dinner was by the Japanese family. And what a dinner that was. I remember it as though somebody had made a gorgeous painting and presented it to me. We entered this room, this whole bunch of us, my father and mother, and I don't know how many of us kids there were at that time. And we go into this room and there's a table, just a regular sized table, and it is covered from one end to the other with colorful foods, with things that they had prepared, Japanese foods. And it was colorful. It was just beautiful. It was like a painting, like an impressionist painting. And I thought, my goodness, they have gone to all this trouble just for us to sit down and eat it up. She had created a work of art in culinary art. I still prefer my Indian food the best of all. And all the people who come and have dinner with me, and I have cooked Indian food. I usually cook Indian food whenever I have company. They all say that they prefer the way I cook my food than any restaurant that they go to. It may be because I don't use pepper. I don't make it hot. And I don't know why they would say that. I guess just leaving the pepper out lets you taste the food a little more. And now that I've gotten older and am more concerned about not eating fatty things, I don't put in as much butter as I used to. Sometimes I don't use any. And still, even I had lunch with one of my grandsons a couple of days ago, Sean, and he said the same thing. He said, there are 5 Indian restaurants near where I live now. This is San Rafael. And he said, but you know, I don't like any of the cooking in any of the restaurants as much as I like yours. And I suppose that part of the reason people like my cooking is that I have also learned how to cook American-style food. And so it's a little combination. Now, how do I get off of this subject?
Life, I guess.
What?
Much like the rest of your life, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it is a combination.
So, what was the experience like for the kids growing up in Astoria? Because there are 8 of you, right? So.
Yeah, at that point there were just 4
there were 4
in the beginning.
Okay.
Erica's,
so the era, yeah, okay.
Erica's film is not doesn't stick to actual facts. It's a narrative based on the facts. The facts are that there were 2 brothers older than me, and then a sister older than me, and then I'm the 4th. And the 2 younger brothers were born 5 years later, so they wouldn't be the ones who wore the turbans. It was my older brothers. But one day Erica called me and she said, do you mind? I think I'm going to make you the older sister, older than the 2 brothers. And I said, why should I mind? It's just loosely based on my memoir anyhow. And I hadn't meant for it to be anything special. I just sat down one day and decided, I'm trying to improve my writing. Why don't I just write about a happy time in my life? And that was Astoria. So I wrote it. So when you write the happy times, you also remember the unpleasant things. And Erica had to do without snow because she went to enough expense making the movie, taking all the equipment up to Oregon and dragging everything up. So she couldn't wait for snow. She had to do it when she did it. It was snow fights that we used to have as we were walking to school. Boys would come and just toss snowballs and knock my brother's turbans off. And we would help them by rolling snowballs to ammunition for them. Let's see. There's so much to talk about, it's hard to decide what would be of any value for you to hear.
So the film is based on your memoir, right? But it's mostly about the sons?
Yes.
About the brothers?
Yeah. Well, you've seen it.
Yeah.
No, it is, yeah. I don't think I will talk too much about the film because Erica has talked about it. I mean, it's in her court. Uh, I can tell you what it was like to go up to Astoria while it was being made.
Sure. Yeah.
I was just there for 4 days, and the making of it took much longer than that. Well, I didn't realize that I had done something special until I arrived, and everybody's honoring me. Oh, here comes the what was it? The one who started this whole thing, the whole process of the film being made. And but they relaxed. Everybody relaxed very shortly after meeting me. They knew they didn't have to have me on any pedestal. And it was really fun because the food was catered. Erica had arranged for somebody to bring it all out to our set, and the set was a pasture. The set was not just a pasture, but where we ate our meals was a pasture, and there were bales of hay, so we used those to sit on, and that was fun. And the old man who had, I should remember his name, but I don't. I'm not going to try to remember anybody's name. Mm-hmm. He would come out and watch, and a lot of people would come from the town and just stand and watch. And this older man who owned that property, he said that he had seen this a van load or car load of young people driving back and forth across the bay from where his house is, but a very small inlet of the bay. And he said, I wondered what on earth they were doing. And then one day they found their way around on the land and came into my driveway up to my house and said they were going to make a movie and they were interested. So that's how it got started. And he was quite excited about it. And I was excited too, because Astoria is just such a special place.
When you went back, was there anyone from your childhood who was still there? Or?
No. When Erica and I went there the first time when she was doing the research, we didn't know anybody. I've written this. I'm sort of a writer. I don't write very much, but I've written about this for historical, for a magazine. It's called Kumtux, and that means it's from an Indian tribe, that it means to know, to acknowledge, to inform, something like that. And it's the magazine of the Historical Society in Astoria. And in that, after we finished our research, Erica and I, the editor of the magazine, Lisa Penner, asked me if I would write about having been there and done this. And so I did. And if it was possible to get a copy of that, but I think it's out of print, I've told all about what it was like coming back there. I had left Astoria in 1922 with my family, and I went back there, well, I guess, in 70 years later. Not many people are around that much longer. And I don't know if I met any of the older people, but I met some people who had known my brothers. So I did meet, that's right. I met several women, and two of them had known my brothers and had known when we lived there in this place right next to the river. We lived on a bank of the river, the Columbia River. For anybody who knows geography, it's a mighty river. It's really wide. You look across it and you really think you're looking at another world so far away. It's Washington on the other side. So we lived there for the 6 years, and along with the happiness of just being with children and speaking their language, I guess I grew up speaking Punjabi and English simultaneously, because I don't know when I didn't know one or the other. But inside our house we were just completely Punjabis. Punjabi being the part of India that my parents came from. And we always talked about when we were going back, the children as well as the parents. And we were going to go back as soon as we could, because that was our home. We had to get back there. Of course, we never did, as you can see. But the happy things were that the children were our friends, all the neighbors. The ones who threw the snowballs lived farther away. We had to go up a cliff where there's a road that led to the school, and it was along that road that they would ambush. I don't know how often they ambushed my brothers, but it did happen more than once. But down below, on the bank of the Columbia River, there was a meadow, and around the meadow there were houses, and the people who lived there, their children became our friends. We'd have potato roasts on the beach. It was a rocky beach. And so we learned about Americana, what America was like in an earlier time, the kind that people who want America to be the way it used to be, that was it. That was good and that was not good, because during our investigation in the newspapers we discovered that the Ku Klux Klan, every member of the legislation in the year that we were leaving Astoria, 1922, I believe, was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And that was pretty astonishing when I read that. So all these people that I was playing with and knew, they had all the attributes of racism and hatred for foreigners in that case being anyone who hadn't emigrated from Europe. If you came from anywhere else, you were an outsider. But for children, the outsider part of it changes very quickly. You forget about it when you start playing together and learning how to roller skate and how to walk with stilts and all the exciting things that children find to do. But there were nasty things that happened from adults. And one of the nastiest things was in the very beginning when we started living in this house on the bank of the river. One day we found a family of mice under our house, and they're cute. Any little newborn thing is cute. So we were excited. We were going to rush in and tell our mother, and she was the only one at home at the time. But before we did that, a woman was walking along the road. It was a dirt road on top of the bank. And so we showed it to her, showed these mice to her. We were so excited, we'd gathered them up. And she looked at us and she smiled very sweetly. And without any further description of her, she was white, she was blonde, and certainly very different from us in appearance. And she said, "Oh my, what are you going to do with that now? Make a curry out of them?" And here I was, just a little kid. I must have been 3 or 4 or something like that. And I remembered, it makes me boil even now to think of it. It was so insulting because we didn't even eat meat. If she had been a little smarter, she would have thought of a better insult to pay to us. So that I'm just bringing these things up because it's just the way that people who are fearful of anybody who doesn't look exactly like themselves and doesn't eat the same food or speak the same language or wear the same clothes, that there's something dangerous about them and we have to be against them.
So that sentiment has been playing itself up again recently?
Never stopped. Never stopped. One just learns to adjust to it. You just feel alienated all the time. Well, you don't. I should speak for myself. I was alienated, naturally, because I was always the other. I was never one of us. But as I said the other day at the World Affairs, I don't feel alienated anymore because after I grew up, I became part of the workforce and started meeting all the adult European immigrants, and I was still an outsider, but I was an outsider until I was really grown up and working. Before that, up to that point, all through school and everything, I was an outsider. But when I started working, doing the same work that all the other women were doing, then I wasn't an outsider. Then I made very close friendships with many women and men. Growing up was really nice because then I became a full person instead of that schizophrenic person that was one person at home and another on the outside, adjusting to others. And I became a whole person because I was like them and they were like me. We were good friends. And then I got into the labor movement in the city, in San Francisco and in Los Angeles. And the differences between me and the others were less and less all the time. So the alienation is gone. Not because I made any effort to assimilate, but it happens. Wherever you are is what you do. I'm really just meeting my own people, that is, the people from India now, because of the migrations, the recent migrations. And I'm just, there is more difference between me and them than there is between me and the European descended women that have been my friends all my life, because they come from slightly different mores, and I have adjusted to the mores of this country, which is a great. It is a greater freedom, and it isn't a greater freedom. When I go to India, I went one time in 1972. I felt like I had come home because all the people in the country, in the villages, they were just like my mother had been. And I just felt wonderful, like I'd come home to my own family. But in the cities, it was entirely different. I was very unhappy there because there was so much poverty. I was walking, I told you I would skip around. There's just too much memory. I was walking along through a bus station one night, coming off of a bus to get home to where I was staying in Patiala, and I almost tripped. I thought it was a bag of mail or something. It was people lying there asleep. That was the only place they had to sleep in. It was horribly shocking to me. And look at me now. Walk down any street in a city and It's worse than it was in India. There's so many rotten things in this world, and they're all brought about because of the greed of the people who have gotten there first and grabbed up what there was to grab up. I'm glad that I had the experience of working through unions and knowing what it meant to demand my right as a worker to get the right pay and the right conditions. If I had stayed in the country and just been a farm wife, I wouldn't have had the understanding I have now of what's wrong with the world. And I know what's wrong with the world. It's the people who are workers produce all the wealth, but they don't get to enjoy it the way that the people who control the wealth through their factories and their corporations and grab it all up. You wonder how a man like Bill Gates could sleep at night knowing that he's hogged up all this wealth while there are people who don't have a toilet to use in the city because they have no home. I don't have much admiration for people who make it rich unless they have an understanding of what it takes to have a really civilized world where the wealth has to be distributed and must be distributed for any reasonable society to continue and make this world a better place instead of the way we're changing it into a worse place, destroying all of our air and our water and everything.
It's interesting that you brought that up because if you remember the Pakistan and India nuclear bomb testing in '98, at the same time as that was going on in the subcontinent, over here in New York, Pakistani and Indian cab drivers, had the largest labor strike, taxi driver strike in the history of New York, I think. So, yeah, it's interesting how the politics change when you're here, and it's about working.
Yeah, we act like we're the only ones who know what's good for the world. We act like we're the policemen of the world, like we destroyed Kosovo. In our name, we didn't. But in our name, with our tax money, there's so many countries that we have destroyed. Went into Guyana, killed the wonderful man who was the leader there. I think it's Guyana. I get mixed up about my history, my country sometimes. Panama, our troops just tore through there, regardless of how much damage, looking for one person who was supposed to be a dope dealer. The trouble is that the people who do all these bad things that we're presumably going to cleanse the world of later with our armies are the very people that we have set up. We had helped the man in Iraq with funds from our resources here, and we had, because we were fighting Iran at the time, and we had set up the Taliban. The Taliban is something that the U.S. had set up. You read articles in the Chronicle. I read articles in the Chronicle every day because I'm just fascinated to see how news can be covered up so. While you're supposedly telling the news, for instance, there's an article just this couple of days ago about how the Taliban used to meet with our leaders. It's in the Chronicle. It's not something I read in some newspaper that one would say, well, where did you get that information?
So, because of all that, I guess the South Asian community has found itself in this double bind, right? On one hand, you're perceived as the enemy, but then on the other hand, there's all this other history, right? So what would you say to people who are dealing with that dichotomy right now? Well, especially, first of all, to Sikh men who wear the turban and who are being targeted, you know, even though they're clearly not Afghani or, you know, any relation, but it's just because of the turban. And your brothers having gone through, you know, a similar experience. And then secondly, just in general, to the community.
It's ignorance. There's such profound ignorance throughout the world that people have to find somebody to kill just because somebody, and we don't know who, did the horrible thing in New York. It's just total ignorance. If they, first of all, they don't even know that a Sikh is not a Muslim. Osama bin Laden is a Muslim and he wears a turban. If Americans were a little more educated, in real education of knowing what the rest of the world is like, instead of just seeing people with turbans as somebody weird and dangerous, if they studied any history, I recommend to everybody that they should read what Howard Zinn has written, the people's history of the world. He even tells how Columbus came and destroyed, killed so many people, caused so much disaster, and then we wouldn't be idolizing the very people who have done so much damage. I'm glad that Columbus Day has been changed to something else. The name, Columbus Day. Indigenous Peoples Day, right. And reading about all the all the tragedies taking place all around the world. They don't need to be. If we read people like that woman, let's see if I'll remember her, Rachel Carson, what she does about, what she told about what we have to do to preserve our nature. Instead of that, our president refused to join in and getting, what was it, to something that where we could improve the air quality, and he was the only one who voted against it. I don't know which president that was. It was probably Clinton or somebody. They seem to have the same program that they act from. This is a far cry from talking about my personal history. My personal history is like everybody else's personal history. If you're poor, you get used. If you're rich, you forget that there are poor in the world, and you forget what caused the poverty, because it's the workers, the ones who are the poorest, who make all the wealth. Why is it that they're not the ones who get to enjoy it the most? I have to get off of this soapbox.
All right. I remember at the World Affairs Council you said that you were divorced, right?
I was what?
You yourself were divorced?
Yeah.
Well, can you talk a little bit about your marriage and all that?
The reason that is of interest, there are millions of people who get divorces, but me coming from a Sikh culture, I guess it was lucky for my parents that they weren't living at the time that I got my divorce, because if they were living, I might not be living.
Can you first start with your marriage?
What?
Like with your marriage before the divorce?
I married a wonderful man. I was just too young and immature to realize what it means to get married. Well, I got married because I was being pressured. We were about to be taken to India to live. Oh, I don't want to go into all this history. Anyway, I married a very fine man. He had the same political views that I did, which meant getting India free from the rule that Great Britain had over us. And so we had the same views in so many things that it should have been a perfect marriage. But,
Well, the reason I asked, not to delve into your personal life, but because did that influence your politics and, I mean, it was pretty radical at the time.
Yeah,
regardless of your religion.
It was radical even for Americans, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And to be raising children on your own and all
to raise 3 children. All the friends that I had when I came to San Francisco and I was living alone, I had gotten my divorce, or I was getting my divorce. Nobody had 3 children and was working alone. None of the people that I knew. They were all married, except a few women who had 1 child, maybe. So it was quite a radical thing, but it was a radical thing that came from desperation. I just wanted more out of life than I was getting being a housewife. And then I realized what it meant to be able to be your own person if you made your own income. If you're a married woman and you're dependent on your husband for every penny that you spend or get to spend, then you're not free. When you go out and work, then you can make your own conditions about what you're going to do with your life. And I did that. And I've never regretted that. I've sometimes regretted the fact that I wasn't mature enough to appreciate my husband more and to help him understand that we could have a better marriage if he could be more tolerant of his views about women's role.
Did your mom, when did your father pass away? So did your mom also have a similar experience, or?
Well, no, I don't know. Their marriage was arranged, as most Indians' marriages were at that time, and still are, I suppose, to some degree. No, they didn't have any problems because that was it. You got married. That's the only reason I stayed married for 11 years, because marriage was it. I got married, and that was what I was going to stay for the rest of my life. So that was the way it was with my parents. There was just no concern about what's wrong. Everything was very happy in our home.
What about after he passed away? Because you said your mom had...
Then she
Right.
became very worried about, that we just do something to disgrace the family. We might meet a boy or something. That was the greatest worry, that what'll happen if you take up with boys. Well.
And at that point, how old were you guys?
I was 11 when my father died.
Okay.
And then I was just at the end of 16 when my mother died 6 years later, 17 almost. It was rough for her because she had the burden of not only our survival as a family, but she had the burden of seeing that nothing bad, untoward happened to her daughters. And because we were so young,
And a lot of people, historically, you always hear the men's stories of who came over as workers, like steel workers or agricultural workers, but you rarely hear about the women who are here as well, raising children, sometimes on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I thought it was interesting,
Well, my mother wasn't raising... Well, she was raising on her own but of course she had a lot of good, strong labor by the time, because she managed to get some cows and bought some cows, and we had a dairy, so we sold the milk and had some income, and we survived. And also, probably every Indian at that time raised a garden, and so all of were vegetarians anyhow, and we had a cow. Before we had a dairy, we always had a cow to provide for the family. And my mother was totally vegetarian. She didn't even eat eggs, so we didn't have to worry about growing chickens, although we did have chickens. Well, yeah, I guess my mother's hardships were far greater than any that I have known personally, because just from getting a divorce, I got so much freedom of action. I could do what I wanted to do. I could spend my money the way I wanted to spend it, as though I had any chance to worry about too much money. But my mother just had to, well, it must have been very lonely for her, because she didn't understand us and we didn't understand her. And she had no friends. All until, until the year that she died, 1932, there were 3 Sikh families in the state. There was Jane Singh's family, and there was another person, Lobgord was a woman's name. And once in a while, once in a year or something, we might have contact with the others. But that was it. And my mother did have, but then there were just all the Indian men who had come, who had never married, or if they did marry, they were at a distance. But then she had us. We were growing up and creating problems for her. Although we never did anything bad. My sister and I, we were under a microscope all the time as to our movements, out of fear of what might happen. Nothing ever happened. I guess the reason that we got married so young was that we had to escape what my oldest brother then took charge after my mother had died, and that was the plan then, to get us to India so we'd get married to proper Indians. But we both found some proper Indians right here to get married to.
So when did you become involved with the Ghadar party?
From the very beginning.
So what was the beginning?
The beginning?
Well, can you tell us what it is first of all?
Yes, oh sure. I'd love to talk about the Ghadar party, because that was the best part of my life growing up. The Ghadar party was a party formed by people living on the West Coast here to free India. And it started with the idea that here we are, we came to this country to improve our lives. Instead of that, we're treated like dirt here. The immigration was cut off completely in 1917. No more Asians could come. Well, I shouldn't say Asians. No Indians, what I know about, could come. And so the people who had come here, most of them single men, in fact, all of them single men, except for my father in those years, if they had to just, they were cut off from their families completely. If they wanted to go back to visit, they couldn't return to this country, and if they went back, then they would give up the money that they came here to earn, and they'd go back into the poverty again. So the people got together and they said, what in the heck are we doing? Letting a foreign country come and destroy what is rightfully ours, take it away from us. So they started this Ghadar party, and it meant, I think Ghadar means revolution, that we're going to free ourselves from the imperialist hold on us. And everybody came to it. I think there were about 2,000 to 3,000 men all told on the West Coast, Indians. And there were very few who didn't support it. And the rules that they started with were really great, democratic, that there would be no consideration of religion. There would be no consideration of who was rich and who was poor. We had one object, and that was to free India so that we could act like free human beings here in this country or anywhere, that we would be free. We would have some pride in being ourselves. When they collected money, 3 men would go out. There would be a Sikh and a Hindu and a Muslim together. We're all brothers together. Sisters, forget about them. There weren't many around anyhow. And
but at that time in America, legally, everyone was called a Hindu, right?
yes, right.
Yeah.
Well, not legally, but that's what they...
That was the kind of
And this profound ignorance that I have mentioned, it was... Well, the country was Hindustan, and so they just shortened it to Hindu for all of us, whether somebody was a Hindu or a Muslim or a Sikh or whatever they were, or Christians. I was amazed when I went to India to find Christians there. And they were Hindustani Christians. They were not European Christians. So the Ghadar Party was established in Astoria, Oregon. I learned this later, and it just amazed me that how important Astoria was in this story. In 1913, in April, and there was basically the one object: free India, almost by any means necessary. But what to do then? So a whole lot of men got together, besides raising funds to put out the propaganda, to get a press. 5 Wood Street in San Francisco became the home of the Ghadar Party, and there was a printing press, and they were putting out papers and sending them to everywhere. The Ghadar Party expanded all over the world, wherever there were Indians living, and in Berlin, in Hawaii, I think Hawaii. Anyway, all over the world, there were branches of the Ghadar Party all raising money and putting out the propaganda that we must be free. We must be free from England. And let's see, I got carried away on that thought.
We were talking about the process, like the day-to-day rules, and about how when you used to do outreach, it was regardless of religion.
Yeah. Well, oh yes, that was a thought. A group of men, now this had to be in 1915, the year that I was born, possibly 16, one of those 2 years. They got on ships and decided we're going back to India, and that's where we're going to do our fighting. And the people from here would keep sending money, but first of all, let's join forces with whoever is fighting against the British in India right now. So they went, but because they were homemade strategists, they were arrested as soon as they got off the boats. They were killed as soon as they got off the ships that they went back to India with. Many of them spent the rest of their lives in British prisons until Britain was freed, which takes me to another tack. One of the people that I talked to who had been put in jail by the British when the country was freed, he was put back in jail as soon as he got out by the Indian government because he was too radical for the Indian government. That was in 50, when were we freed? 47, India's freedom. All right. So they weren't successful in one way, but they were successful in another because India finally was freed, and it wasn't by Gandhi alone, I'll tell you that. Gandhi came much later after the Ghadar Party had done its big work.
So Gandhi was about your age or older?
I don't know. I always thought of him as an old man when I was a kid, so I don't know. Let's see. I was working in a music school when he was assassinated,
Oh, okay.
and that was
So he's like
in the early 50s.
Yeah,
So I can't.
he's like a generation before.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Well, we
Okay,
just
so-
weren't. The Ghadar Party was just not for the Gandhi approach at all. They considered that stupid to get kicked and abused and shot, and they believed in taking action against the tyranny that was imposed on us by the British.
how do you think living in the West impacted their politics? You know, having
Impacted
lived
my
in
politics.
yeah,
Mhm.
or the politics of the Ghadar Party here.
Mhm. Well, who living in the West? You mean the Ghadar Party people?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that that was what impacted the Ghadar movement so much as what happened in India, because it was in India that the political parties came out, the Communist Party of India, the Socialist Party, then there are new, more radical parties than those, and they weren't getting it from America. The people here were farm worker people, and most of them, I mean, there were people who went to the universities and became the voice for the Ghadar Party, but the people who really did the gathering of money and all the work and who really were the nuts and bolts of the Ghadar Party were Punjabi people on the whole, who were farm people. They didn't know anything about Marx. They never heard of Marx. But the people in India did, and that's how they formed their political parties. So that the Ghadar Party's mission was to free India, and they didn't make enough of a program for the freedom to make sure that after freedom there would be some equitable social behavior. It's the people in India in those political parties who are attending to that or trying to.
Do you think I guess my question before was that the whole philosophy of, you know, we're equal within the party, the Ghadar Party,
Mhm.
and not like
Not
religion
separated.
doesn't matter or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, was that a product of living here? And, you know, like right now, there's all this South Asian solidarity because of what's going on and the racism that people are experiencing. Because, you know, white people can't tell the difference,
Yeah.
you know? Versus if you were in India, it would be a lot easier to just be in your own religious community and like have the infighting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So-
well, I hadn't really thought about that, but you've named it. It's because we were here as Indians, and so therefore there was a solidarity that if you're an Indian and I'm an Indian, everybody else is down on us who are in control here, so we're together. Yeah, that would impact it, wouldn't it?
So, all right. So you were talking earlier about the nuts and bolts, about the door-to-door.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back into that?
Well, my father made a contribution, and his name is not really known outside from the fact of when he came to this country. Somebody from Vancouver called me one day, and he said, I can't see anything about your father anywhere. I can't find anything in any paper or book or anything. And I said, well, how many people get into papers or books? He was just a working man, a wonderful person, and he had a goal of getting his children educated and providing his family with a good life. That's not something that gets written about. He didn't go run for offices, although he was in the Sikh temple in Stockton. He always was part of that, both my parents, and he was always part of the Ghadar Party. But he wasn't in the leadership of the Ghadar Party. He had 8 kids, 7 kids before he died. He had other obligations that he attended to. He sent one of his sons, now I take that back again, he didn't send him, one of his sons, Bud, my brother Bud, when he was 12 years old, joined up with a mission that was going to India to start a revolution. There was a Raja who had been deposed by the British. I've written about this in a book, and I won't go into that, in a booklet. I won't go into that now because it's Bud's story. Now, a man who will let his son, 12 years old, join a group of 7 other men to go with somebody who says, I have contacts with Chinese and other, I don't know who else, where I can get ammunition to India for the revolution. I just need a band of men and some money. So they gave him $30,000, collected it and gave it to him. And 7, my brother and 7 other men volunteered. And he was just 12 years old when he went. And my parents let him do that. Now, that's something for the history books. It's not everybody who lets their 12-year-old son go someplace for a mission where it'll probably be death. But he became a great man as a result. He was gone from the age of 12 until he was 18. And he came back just before my mother died. The year later, my mother died. So at least. And then there were all these younger kids to take care of. So he couldn't go on with the work that he wanted to do. He wanted to go to Spain to fight against Franco. But joined the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. He couldn't do that because there were kids to take care of.
So what was your involvement with the Ghadar Party?
There isn't any Ghadar Party. There's just a memorial. But even the memorial has been downgraded by the conservative Indian government. The building that we had, the 5 Wood Street, was the memorial, should have been the memorial, but the building was turned over to the Indian government when the freedom came. And in short order, the Indian government tore it down. And it took years before, with the clamor of people, that we have to have our building, our memorial to the Ghadar Party, that then the Indian government put out this squat little building on the same site. But you can't even get into it anymore. After many years of not being in touch with the Memorial Committee, I joined them a few years ago, and about 4 years ago. And so we let it be known that we are a memorial committee, and what we are, want people to remember that we helped free India, and who we were, how we were not bigots of any sort. We were not religious fanatics. We believed in the kind of liberty that democracy should bring. But I don't think it did. Not to India.
So, you personally, were you involved in the fundraising or in the what side of it?
No, I was a
You're allowed
kid.
to speak.
I was a kid. It was my parents who were.
Oh, okay.
We were just part of it. It was our life. We lived it.
Mm-hmm.
All the people, just like you pointed out, that being away from home and being under such adverse circumstances, that it brought us together, the Indian people who were here. They were so close. Everybody knew who everybody else was. Somebody lived in Los Angeles, he knew who the people up in Sacramento were, or the people in Seattle were, or even up as far as Canada, who the people were. They were like a family almost. And the glue that bound them was fighting for India's freedom. Well, I don't know, I think the best part of my life is something I didn't talk about, and that was working with the unions. I did all kinds of work, not just drove for the Marine Corps. First job I got was as a car hop. Do you know what a car hop is?
Yeah.
Well.
So what year was this?
That was. I should write down dates to try to remember things.
Was it before the war, or?
Yes, it was before the Second World War.
Okay.
Car hops work outside of the restaurant. They carry your food to you on a tray and stick it on your car. And a car. What?
Did you have to wear roller skates?
Wear what?
Roller skates?
No, I didn't. We walked. But we worked at night mostly, so we wore long johns. You know what they are? Long underwear like men wear to keep warm underneath the uniform that we... there was no pay. They didn't pay us, believe it or not. I heard Harry Bridges point this out. Of course, I knew I wasn't being paid. We were told that if you don't make $18 in tips during the week, we will make up the difference for you, the boss said. So you made about $18 in tips so that you worked without pay, even had to buy your own uniform. Harry Bridges, you know who Harry Bridges was? Harry Bridges came from Australia, as he was a seaman, a longshoreman, and he built up the Longshore Union, the Longshore Union. It was the most powerful union, possibly in the world, but was certainly in this country. He said that there was a shape-up every morning. People who were to work unloading ships that day, they would have to come at 6 o'clock in the morning and be standing there, and then the boss of the organ company or the ship would come out and say, you, and favorites, whoever he felt like giving work to. And that kind of degrading thing to get it. Well, after the union, there was a hall, a great big hall, and you elected your officers, and you paid your dues, and you took your turn on the jobs. And it was a great, great thing. But the employers were so threatened by it that they killed 2 people during a march that the workers were having. 2 people were killed right on the waterfront. And I think it was right after that, I hate to get my facts wrong, but I probably will, that the whole city shut down. All of the workers went on strike. Just shut the whole city down for, I don't know, I wasn't living here then. I came just right after that. And it was that powerful. So, my first job for myself personally was working as a car hop. And so I got a little education in how to serve food. And so I worked as a waitress for a year or two. And the good thing about working as a waitress was that I'd get a pittance of a pay, and then the tips would make up the rest so that I could, this was after I was divorced, then I was living in San Francisco. So I worked as a waitress for a while, so I know what it's like to be a waitress. And it was fun, though, because waitress is taking food to people, and I'd done that all my life anyhow, is cook for my family, feed my children, feed guests and everybody. So it was like a party. I didn't mind the work at all. But it is work. You're working, walking. And then later the Marine Corps business came up. I worked as a driver, and I don't know whether it was earlier or later that I worked in the machine shops, and that was exciting, learning how to operate machines, to set them up and everything. I even worked with a tool and die, which is you make the parts that the machine shop produces, but did a lot of exciting things. Worked in the post office for a while, and the job there was to answer letters from people, for servicemen who were writing to their families and desperate to hear from them, but because of all the secrecy during a war, they were begging for news from their families. Why doesn't my mail get through? So I did that for just a couple of weeks, and then I got some other job which was better. It was just heartbreaking to read these letters that why doesn't my family answer me? I'm fighting for them. I'm out here stuck in the mud. It was just very tragic, and it just repeats itself like it's happening now. They've already got ground troops out in Afghanistan. I can imagine what their families are feeling. It's really, really terrible. So
what would happen? The servicemen would send letters, but their families weren't allowed to receive them, and then the families would send letters, but they weren't allowed to receive them. Or
the job that I had was to just answer this backlog of letters. There was a stock letter. Well, I didn't write anything. I just typed stock letter. To answer this letter, there was a woman who read the letters and said, and made piles of them. This letter got this answer, these letters got this answer. So there were just stock things to calm the soldiers who had written them, just stock answers to them. Why the letters didn't get through, I don't know. I do know that when my little brother Huddy died, long after I got the notice of his death, all of his letters were sent to me. He had written letter after letter, 10 letters at least, saying, why has the family forgotten me? The families don't forget. The secrecy keeps stuff from going through. So I finally got into office work. And I got into office work because, why? Because I don't know. I was a good typist, and I worked for architects. I worked for doctors. But it wasn't until I joined a union, office workers union, and started working in union offices that I started getting paid well. I think I mentioned that in my talk the other day at the Council, World Affairs, that the architect might come along at 15 minutes of 5 when I was supposed to be going home and say, "Oh, Mrs. Gill, would you mind getting this letter out? It has to go out." Or they might say, "Would you type up these specifications? We're meeting in the morning and they have to be done now. No overtime pay, you just do it because you're their flunky and you do it." But when I got into the union and started working in union offices, you got paid for the time you worked. After that strike that I mentioned, that we went on strike for 3 weeks, we wanted a shorter work week, and we got it. The shorter work week meant that after we had worked our 32 hours, 4-day week, that any day that we worked overtime was paid at time and a half. If we worked on the weekend or on holidays, we got double time. A person who does secretarial work or clerical work gets some appreciation of how important her labor is. That this is the price that you have to charge to get your rightful due. So I worked for union offices, and that was fun too. Fun in the sense that